All right, so before we get into Unreal and start building our substrate materials, I first want to just briefly talk about source control. So, source control is a system that tracks changes to your files over time. So, instead of saving files like fishing pond oh 01 and then fishing pond oh 02 and then fishing pond oh 03, what source control does is it keeps all of your changes that you've made and all the saves that you've made into a structured history. So it allows you to what see what's changed between these two files. You can revert to an earlier version, you can compare versions, and source control allows you to kind of work with other people without overwriting each other's work. You can kind of think of it like a time machine for your project. So, source control is very useful when you're on a team to allow you to kind of collaborate with each other, but just even when you're working individually, it's very useful for yourself as well. We're often going to be creating and experimenting with how we build something, how it looks, how it feels, what the surface detailing is picking up, how contrast, how intense it is, all that kind of things. And we're going to be saving files, and it might be working today. You might think, maybe if I try something else, I could do something else, and then you completely break what you're working on. Yeah, this is especially true when you're working with rigs or you're working with materials with quite a bit of math. So being able to just go back a version is going to be super helpful for yourself. Same thing if your file's corrupt, right? You have a version that you can always go back to. So diversion is a type of modern source control designed specifically for game development, but especially for Unreal Engine workflows. So unlike traditional systems like Git or Perforce, diversion is kind of built to handle large binary files, Unreal assets, and kind of teams of artists and designers. So it integrates into Unreal, so you can check out files, see who's working on what, sync your updates, submit your changes, all within Unreal itself. So the really nice thing about diversion is I find it's a very kind of artist-forward source control. It is very easy to pick up. It's very easy to kind of understand what's happening, and it even comes to the point where you can actually still see files and thumbnails of the work that you're working on, so you know exactly kind of what this file represents. And from somebody who doesn't come from a programming background, where my background is primarily blueprinting, this has been extremely easy to set up and manage. I don't have to worry about getting correct servers and firewalls and all this type of stuff. Diversion is a cloud-based system, or it can be a cloud-based system, so that whether or not I'm working in my office at school or working in my office at home or just bringing it on my laptop, all I need to do is just download Diversion and sign in, and my files are going to be easily and readily available to me. So Diversion is a great option because it is cloud-based, and it also offers you a free version if you are a indie developer making less than $100,000 per year, and it provides you 100 gigabytes of free storage, which is more than enough for you to build games, have a number of different repositories, and still be able to kind of develop. So it's free for that. So this is what I'm going to be using today. There's others out there for sure, but I like the fact that this gives you 100 gigabytes to use, which is kind of really helpful. So I'm going to set this up right now. I've downloaded Diversion and I've installed it, and I've signed up for the account. And there's a couple of ways that we can create a new repository for our project. We can create a empty directory by creating a folder wherever we like, and I can create the repository after it's been created, or I can have this already be created from within Diversion as well. So I'm going to choose new repository, and you can kind of think of repository as the files, the latest files that are going to be existing on the server. And in our case, that's going to exist in the cloud. The workspace is going to be the files that exist on my computer right now. They're going to be my local files. I could be working on a version of the files that are up to date, or somebody else may have checked in files that exist on the repo that I now have to kind of sync down and get the latest version of in order to be working on the same files as them. And this is really nice because it allows me to kind of pick and choose which version of files I'm working on if I do need to roll back to a different version. So I'm going to create a new repository here. So if we're going to a new repository, create new. I have a folder called Diversion Workspaces, Diversion WS, and I'm going to give it a new, my repository, a new name. I'm going to call this Substrate Tutorial. I'll just call it Substrate Tut. And it's going to create a new folder within this Diversion Workspace folder. That is going to be empty. And the repository folder that you do create, it does need to be an empty folder, because what it's going to do is it's going to place a couple of kind of hidden files here, as well as this .dvignore. This file right here, it has a bunch of instructions here that says to ignore certain file types, such as build files and things like that, so that large useless temporary files don't get uploaded onto the server, onto the repository, so that the next member who needs to download the project doesn't have to download all these temporary files. So it's going to ignore all those. And we can create a repository this way, but if we're in Unreal, we can also create a repository directly from Unreal as well. It has a downside, though, that the repository is going to be just that project. And what I like to do is create a folder here called Source Art, which is where I'm going to be creating and storing files such as textures that I may have created from Substance Designer, Substance Painter. I'll place my PNGs or my Targas in here. I'm going to be placing maybe my raw models that I want other members of my team to be able to use, and maybe my Maya projects, things like that. Things that aren't necessarily files that are going to be kept within the Unreal project directory. So I can keep all those here, and then I can place my Unreal project right beside it. So the other side of this is, once I have my repository or Diversion installed on my computer, I need to go to Fab, and I need to install the Diversion plugin. It's going to look like this right here. And we can say install plugin, and we can tell it what version to install the plugin to. And once it's installed, I just need to create a project and make sure that that project has this plugin activated, enabled. So I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to create a new project, and I'm going to create that project in my workspace that I just created over here in my Substrate Tutorial folder. I'm going to place my new project here. I can see that my plugin is installed. If I just go to this installed plugins underneath my engine version, I can see that I do have that Diversion version control active. So when I create a new project, I want to make sure that I store this project in that workspace that I've created for this Diversion repository. And I'm going to give this a name, and I'll just call this tutorial. I'll call this Substrate Tutorial. And I'm just going to create a blank game project. Once this loads up, I just need to enable that plugin and then restart the project in order to activate it. So go to Edit, Plugins, go to this version control, tell it to activate, enable it, then I can restart the project. It's now going to have the Diversion plugin enabled, which I should be able to see if I open up this .u project. This is going to show you all the plugins that are currently enabled. So in case any plugin does break, I could always just set this to false. And now that the Diversion plugin is enabled, if I come down to my lower right hand corner, I have revision control, and I can say connect to revision control. I'm going to say that my provider is going to be that Diversion that I just installed, and this button that just disappeared there will show up if you don't already have this project stored in a repository. It would let you create a repository from this project, and it's going to kind of do all that automatically without even having to leave Unreal Engine. The downside, as I mentioned before, though, is the entire repository is just going to be this project. So if I wanted to keep my source art files in here, it's also going to be in that same folder structure as the Unreal project, which I don't really want to do. I don't really want to be storing PNGs, Maya files, and things like that here. I'd like to keep that into kind of a separate folder outside of my Unreal project. But if you only have Unreal project that you want to work with and you're happy keeping all your other files not version controlled, that's totally fine. So now that this is happy, this is the root of the repository, that's correct. I'll hit accept settings, and now it says I have successfully connected to the project. I can see the diversion icon here, and I can see what branch I'm on. We're not going to get too deep into version control and branching and reverting files and all that, but I am going to be periodically committing my changes onto this server so that I can see, onto this repository. Just in case I mess up anything, I can go back a version and my work is going to be saved. And just in case anything corrupts, I'm going to have a file that is going to be, good for me to kind of go back without losing too much work. There's no downside to using version control. It's not hard to set up using this diversion. It keeps your files safe, and it really is going to save your life one of these days. Everybody has been bitten once or twice in their life by a corrupt file, and this is going to give us some protection. Now, first thing I like to do when I have my project kind of started up and connected to the revision control is I just like to set up a few of my folders here that I know that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to have a materials folder, I'll probably have a blueprints folder, etc., etc. And I'm just going to set a few things in here. I'm going to create a levels folder, I'm going to create a new level, and I'm going to save this into that directory. Oops, into that directory. I'm just going to call this Substrate Sandbox. So this exists here, and I have my materials folder here. I'm just going to create an example one. So M substrate basic, just so something exists here. You'll notice when you do start using version control that we're going to see icons appearing next to our files. If it's a new file, it'll have a plus icon. If it hasn't been saved yet, it's going to have a question mark. And if something has changed, it's going to have a question mark as well. So with this material created, I'll hit save all. It's going to find that file. I'll save it, and then I'll see that it has a plus icon that's going to pop up saying that this is a new file that's marked as add the next time I commit my changes. So I just created this project, and I want to be sure that I commit my project to that server, that repository in the cloud, so that I have kind of a version 0 that I can kind of go back to. So these are all the files that it's going to be uploading right off the bat. It's going to have my INI files, my project settings, things like that. So I'm going to just call this initial check-in and commit that. Awesome. And with all that being done now, I have my initial commit, which is what gets created as soon as you create the repository. Then this is my second check-in that I did that had all the files that we just saw a minute ago. So our repository is good to use. We have our project set up, and now we can start creating some substrate materials.